Hey there, Dango Stu here. Today's video is about making this space empty for the first time in 8 months and is proudly sponsored by marineengine.com. Sorry this video is late. The launch itself got delayed from the Friday to the Tuesday in the end. That caused us lots of troubles because the tide, the top of the tide was dropping that whole time. But we'll head back to 10 days ago and we'll pick up when Pete came down to help me start sealing the deck and getting the boat ready to be launched. Peter's giving me a hand today. He's in the lazaret at the moment. We're just undoing these fittings on the deck here. All right, I got a grip on it now, Pete. Is it power tool territory or?
Now when you're lying in there, there are holes
everywhere. I know, it's like what's looking up at the night sky, isn't it?
Yeah, these are all the holes I could see.
Yep. Pete gave me a hand this morning. We've cleaned the back deck up and Pete's taken off these two little lugs that were in the corners, nasty little trip hazards. Now we're just going to keep cleaning it, find as many of these holes in the deck and just patch them so I can go away for a month. We'll do proper repair when I get back, but we're just trying to stop all the leaks for when it rains. Yes, oh yeah, this is the worst. So Pete's gone round now and marked, cleaned up, wire brushed and painted all the holes so we know where they are. Now we're just going to go and put some Sikaflex in them all where we can. But yes, the combing around here needs...
Really bad. I'll get out anyway. It's a really bad stretch around.
Yeah, fortunately, because this is under the awning of the wheelhouse. Yeah, right. Yes, but much less water ends up in the engine bay than ends up in the lazaret. All those holes collect a lot more water than these huge ones do. So, we were toying with the idea, we've got some thick copper that we could back it with and try and just pad weld it. But to be honest with you, time's not really on our side because we've got to get the crane in yet as well. And
the metal's too thin.
Metal's very thin, you know, you can be chasing for a long time. So I think we'll just Sikaflex the holes. So here we are under the deck in the lazaret, and you can see all these pinholes, and as Pete points out, you can actually see the green paint kind of coming around it, so we know we've got them all marked. Now we're going to Sika them up, and when I get back from the US we'll be cutting deck out and welding some new steel in. So we're thinking leave the paint just to stop rust, and because the Sikaflex will stick to it. And although I wouldn't weld through the paint, I'm thinking most of it's beyond pad welding anyway, so we'll probably be cutting.
And Sika will stick to absolutely
anything, that's it, so yeah.
Let's do that, and then we'll get underneath and see what we can see.
See what we can see afterwards, yeah. But I mean, the reality is, like, it's not below the waterline, so really...
It's just runoff water.
If it goes from taking 20 litres in a storm to taking 2, I'm happy.
And it's rainwater, not salt water.
That's it, yeah, exactly. I mean, I know if I got the needle gun onto this, it would all over. Exactly.
Looking at that.
I know, don't do it, don't touch it. The trouble was I actually did needle gun a lot of this, but that can happen when we get home.
The other option is to coat it all in a waterproofing membrane.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll put new steel in first, but a lot of people have actually been saying truck bed paint is awesome for decks because it's strong and it gives you...
Raptor coat.
Yes, right, okay.
And that would achieve the result, especially if you put fiberglass tape in it.
Right, okay, yeah.
But this is just a temporary repair so it doesn't sink while you're away.
Yep.
And then pull the floor up and do it.
Exactly, do it properly, yep. It's not too bad, it's thick enough to not seep through, isn't it? We can always put a second layer in a couple of days' time once that bottom layer is set. Not that I think you need to, actually. That'll stay waterproof for 4 weeks for sure.
Oh,
sorry.
That one's nothing.
Looks fine, isn't it? make a huge difference. Pete's now Sikaflexed all the ones you could see and then came down for a final check, and because they're all blocked up other than one, it sort of stands out. Up here there's one hole remaining, so we're going to plug that one and then we're done. Now, other than that big wet exhaust I've still got to deal with tomorrow. The base of the crane is 250 millimeters square and it's a 5-degree slope, so I need to have it 22 millimeters higher at the, near the gunnels than I do towards the center of the boat. So we'll make the wedges and then 2 front bits. So 20 mil there, 42 here. I need 62 here, don't I? I'm just getting the base of the crane ready to make the wedge so we can install it. Huge thanks to Dean from Horsby Steel for helping me out at the last minute with some scrap steel to get this happening. So thank you, Dean, really appreciate it. Now, what I've got to do here, I think I've got to shorten these side pieces a little bit just to bring this in and give me a gap. So I'm going to shorten these by a few mil and then bevel them all so we can get a good bead of weld inside. So we'll bevel the base of the crane, bevel this steel here as well. Alright, I think the rough layout's pretty good now, so I'm just going to start tacking it together, then we'll weld it out. It's going alright. Not too bad for me. Yeah, right.
That spin, that's freewheeling one way.
One way, but not the other. It's got a clutch, a one-way clutch on it somehow. Alright, let's get some power happening.
It's got a one-way clutch, so what you're lifting doesn't go cascading down the hill.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Ooh. They're going to be smaller than my battery terminals.
You got a set of battery, you got a set of jumper cables?
In the Parenti, yeah.
No, I'm just going to jump it off the crew. What is that?
Martin.
Do you want to bring it down?
I'll use the batteries in here.
Oh, okay, just jumper it off the batteries here.
Marty, how are you, mate?
Cool.
Those alligator clips we bought.
No, they were just here because I didn't blow them off the edge because I was being careful.
2 days in a row, Marty.
Yeah, look, I've got a spare hour now. If I do need help, let me know. I want to go home.
This is Peter, so mate. Hi, mate.
Hey, Marty.
Marty
Peter.
from
Hey, right.
Marty, there's a beer in the esky. Otherwise, you're not allowed to stay.
Is that right? Can I help?
Them the rule. Yeah, but only if you have a beer.
So we stop moving forward.
Ballast.
Shot. So we're live.
Okay, yep, we're clipped on, yep.
In theory,
Still not doing anything. Okay, so it's trying, but it's...
That's seriously hot.
Right, you alright?
Oh, I'm alright.
yeah.
Okay.
Alright, hang on. Let's...
So our problem is in that motor. So if we go any further forward, get the edge of the fuel tank.
Yep. And at least gets us gearbox or something, you know. I reckon I'll mark it. I'm going to mark the ground.
Yep.
Looks like it's got a little twist on it at the moment.
why don't we do this? Why don't we measure where the wall is so we know where the edge of the fuel tank is? Mark that on the deck so we're sure.
Yep.
And you
Okay.
can,
We've measured a couple of times across here to give us the line of this bulkhead, which comes along here. This is the fuel tank here, so we're keeping it on the other side of the fuel tank so we can access the underside of the deck for reinforcing and bolts and all sort of stuff down the track. It's getting late now. Pete and I are going to the pub, but we have achieved a lot. Thank you, Pete.
no worries. Happy to help.
Thank you. We've sealed the deck up temporarily, made the wedge, and welded the wedge to the deck here. So we're going to, unfortunately, we were going to use this to lift things like the generator and the compressor on board, but the electric winch wasn't working. So Pete has kindly removed it for me. So I'm going to take that home tonight, see if I can figure out what's wrong with it. If not, replace it. Then we'll get stuff on deck. Then we'll launch the boat. Here we are, day before launch. It was this Thursday morning, and the winch here didn't work. So I'm going to pull this apart, see if it's, you know, the brushes are dodgy or something like that. It's never been run, but I bought it quite a while ago, and as you can see, it's been sitting outside the whole time. So we'll pull it apart, see what we see. We need to get the winch running to get the stuff on deck to go tomorrow, so this has kind of become my priority job for now. Wish me luck. Looks like it's just got a couple of screws here, so we should be able to get the end cap off and see the brushes. Alright, all the 4 brushes are quite corroded. I'm gonna clean them up, little brass brush, spray, see if I can get the springs to allow the brushes to move back in. See what happens, but I think I'll replace this with a better motor pretty soon. This clearly is not up to marine. They knew it was going on a boat, but it's clearly not up to it. Just going to go with carb cleaner, or brake cleaner actually is good for electrical connections. Something that doesn't leave a residue. Alright, brushes are all moving relatively freely now and returning with the springs. So I think that's ready to go. I've put the bolts on the wire wheel, so I'll coat those with something too. Now I'm just going to give all the contacts around here a bit of a clean up, and then we'll try and get this thing back together with a bit of sealant on the cap this time. Sorry I can't film doing it because I'm just on my phone. The tripod and camera is still at the boat. I wasn't really expecting to have to do this, so anyway, I'll show you the end result. Alright, contacts cleaned up with a bit of brake cleaner and a little brass brush. So, time to get this back together. The real trick getting these things together is dropping it on. I wish my air compressor was working so I could blow that out. Anyway, is dropping it on. You've got to get the contacts apart to get them over these contacts, and that's never easy to do, so we might try and reach in with a pick, a bit like picking a lock, you know, just get one, drop it, get two. Sometimes brushes point straight up, at which point I actually have a little tool somewhere that I used to use for outboards. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Which just has a little fork in the end, so you can kind of lay it on the brushes, push them down, slide this out at the last minute. But this way is a bit trickier. Somehow I managed to rotate this outer casing independent of the flange here, but I've just stuck a little bore scope down there so we can find the, oh there we go, find the bolt holes again. So where it was like this, and it's not till it's back to here that I can get the bolts back in to put it together. Just going to put a little bit of grease on the spindle that goes into the bushing. So far so good. Ah, got it. Forgot to put sealant on it. Typical. Clearly this outboard's had a lot of attention recently. Okay, back together. Got the thread aligned again, which means I could just put the bolts back in. Yes, I should have scored the casing rather than use paint, because of course the brake cleaner and carb cleaner wash the paint off. When will I learn? Anyway, probably never. Alright, I'm not even going to test this here. It either works or it doesn't. I'm going to get it to the boat where I can easily put some jumper leads on it and test it there. So let's get going for T-minus 1 day. I'm going to finish my coffee first. Can't rush these things. Alright, now think before you go. What do I need? Oh, these are the bits from the dash. I'm totally redoing the switches and the wires. So I brought these home to make some replacements. Just totally blank, so we can just start from scratch and customize it to the switches and gauges we're going to have from now on.
Ready for it?
Yep. Just packing up as much as possible, getting it all into the lazarette, keeping it up a little bit high just in case we do get some water. I actually killed one of my welders by putting it in the lazarette and having the lazarette fill with water while I was away and drowned it. So I've learned that lesson. I've been a bit lazy in filming the last couple of days, just been really tired and pushing to the end, you know. On the weekend, Leon and Dylan came up and gave me a great hand on the electrics. We did some planning, very important. Leon started setting out the main distribution board that's going to go in the lazarette. Dylan helped run some main cables up to the front, and the rest of the time we were just pulling out old wiring, which is what I'm pushing on with today. In here, believe it or not, it's actually looking really good now compared to what it was. It was just an incredible mess. But I'm still pulling loads and loads of wires out. I'm pretty much going to redo the dash. So I'm taking the 2 bits of timber from here and up here home. The one up here actually didn't follow the curve of the wheelhouse, and I need the extra height for some tall bilge pump switches I want to put in, so I'm going to make a new one. I'll cut it rectangular to be this height, then I'll hold it up and just scribe the curve and cut it out here. Anyway, in the meantime, what I'm really doing actually is just getting in with the little cutters here and just cutting up as many of the cable ties as I can so that I can figure out where all the wires go. Mystery's starting to get a little bit clearer. So everything at the dash here is 12 volt, and it was all run through this 24 to 12 volt voltage reducer. Looks like these top 3 fuses were 24 volt in, because they're all linked and they fed the reducer, and then everything below there was 12 volts. All these ones linked here. This dual core here was off the 24 volt side, so I'm just going to jump up and trace that, see where it goes. Just have to do one thing at a time. It's pretty tedious, but it's really the only way to do it. Since we last spoke, I've come to my senses, kind of, and I'm just ripping it all out. It's so hard to figure out what goes where. What I'm left with though is, I think this is some lighting from downstairs. All these white wires go behind there, appear to be nav lights. This is the loom from the engine bay, so it's like starter solenoid, all that kind of stuff. And all this goes into here, then heads aft. So I'll have a look which one's that. It is, so it's the furthest one to the starboard side it goes through. Alright, let's see if we can find that. This is the classic thing that gets confusing when you're tracing wires. Here was a brown and a white going in through this conduit, but couldn't find one coming out. And it turns out it's spliced halfway through the conduit from brown and white to red and black wire, so until you find the join you just don't know. Anyway, it's all coming out. Rather than having that join that's both confusing from a colouring point of view and, you know, a chance for high resistance, just replace it all. Here's the main earth for the boat as well, inside the conduit. One join there, another one just there. I'm glad it's all going, it's a shocker. And then here, partnering our multiple joins on the ground, the main positive comes into this terminal block and then becomes a black wire to head forward instead of a red one. Awesome. Very intuitive. It's now Sunday, heading up to see Leon again to do some more work on the electrics. Friday's launch got canned due to the weather. We had really just 2 days of solid rain and the crane company wasn't keen to do it, fair enough. So I think we're going to go for Monday. So today, hopefully, is officially our last sort of day working on the boat before it gets launched now. I think they're saying tomorrow morning. So, beautiful day today, which is great. Head up there and get on with the electrics and hopefully get everything on deck. So, this morning the first thing I'm going to do is test that crane and see where the motor's working on it now. Feels like turning up to work for the last day or something. Alright. Actually, speaking of last day, it's actually the first day of spring, which is nice. I just want to look at this tide while we're here. You can hear a bilge pump running on its side. It's not going to do anything. The morning tides are lower than the evening tides, but they're all pretty high at the moment. I know I can get off on the evening king tide, but there's a small chance if they launch it early in the morning tomorrow, which I think is the plan, that we might get off on the morning high. So I'll just see where it's at now. So we're actually just past the high, which is good. So if we'd got the peak, we would have got a 1.6 at... So we're actually just past the high at the moment. So it's 1.5 now, and I think it peaked at... I don't know, peaked at 1.5. So, then tonight's tide is 1.7. Then tomorrow, at 10:40, we've got a 1.5. Not great. Although the evening tide's only 1.6. Oh well, so if it doesn't get off in the morning, we've only got another 10 centimetres in the evening. It's a bit of a shame because Friday was the day I was hoping to launch on, and it was like a 1.8 or something. So because we missed our day, we've lost 20 centimetres of water. Alright, first step in getting power for the winch so we can test it is I'm going to put one of these fuses on the positive terminal of the single 12 volt battery that's going to be powering it. So this goes onto the terminal of the battery. This metal plate is connected along here, but it's isolated from the stud. So it's not until you put a fuse in like this. In this case it's a 250 amp fuse. Washer, spring washer, nut. Then we'll go attach that to our battery. This wire you can see going onto the battery directly. I'll keep there directly because it's already got its own factory inline fuse. That's the input from a battery charger I've got connected. I've actually got 2 battery chargers that'll charge all of these from mains, and I'm going to mount them on the bulkhead here. I presume it's actually possible to break these fuses if you over tighten them, so yeah, I'll just snug it like that.
Well, the good news was that the winch worked fine, ran nicely in both directions. The bad news was the mic wasn't plugged in properly, so I didn't get to record that bit, but pretty soon after that Leon turned up to help me with more of the electrics.
This is Leon, who helped me do the board, and we're just having a look at it now. I might actually, Leon was just about to explain to me how a few things go, so I figure we may as well do that together. So what do we got?
Alright, so for the moment, the main thing we wanted to get going today was solar and Bilge, just so that way you can leave the boat while you're away, not be too concerned about it.
Yeah, that really is the goal for sure.
So the way we've got these laid out is starting battery on the left, so that's 24 volt.
Yep.
Parallel switch between that and the house battery, which is on the right.
Yep.
And then this will be a 12 volt supply, so each battery bank will go to those 3.
Yep.
the parallel is only in sort of emergency, I guess,
Yep.
because you've got the auto switching
Yeah,
relay
the
there.
VSR to charge both batteries, yep. Both banks.
So as soon as either solar is providing charge or
Yep.
your engine's running, providing charge,
Yep.
this will kick in and feed power across this
So
side.
they're paralleled whilst ever there's a charge voltage on either side.
Yep, that's it. So I initially was thinking of getting a dual sense one, so it wouldn't have mattered if we put solar on the house or solar on the starting, but this, I ended up sending you the wrong link. This is a single sense.
Oh, is it?
So that made my decision. Solar has to go on this side. So solar and engine starting both on this side.
Yep.
So although it comes in there, that is down to the left terminal.
Yep.
So yeah, basically that'll feed in, automatically charge the house.
Yep.
We've also got feeding from that starting side down to the red arc DC to DC converter.
Yes.
So that will feed back up into your 12 volt system. So
Perfect.
plenty of current supply on that. Being 50 amp, that'll recharge your 12 volt pretty well. Even when you're using the winch heavily, it should probably not
Keep it
discharge
up.
much at all.
So, yeah, just to be clear, so we've got a 24 volt starting, 24 volt house, and then a 12 volt house. We've actually got two house banks, just if you're wondering what's going on there.
Yep.
All right, and yes, and the red arc unit is all about taking our 24 volt alternator and allowing it to charge a 12 volt system, but we can also put a 12 volt
Solar
cell into there,
Yep.
which we'll do as well. So we'll have one solar cell, or even one or two in parallel.
So the other regulator that you've got is a 30 amp regulator. So its maximum was 720 watts.
Yep.
So you got 6 panels, 150 each.
Yep.
If you went 5 of them, you sort of 750 watts. So I figured 4 of the panels on the 24 volt side.
Yep.
And then 2 of them
Two on
feeding
the
to this
12.
12 volt side. So that keeps well within the limits of those regulators.
So, what do we do next?
Well, I figure next thing is getting this positioned.
Mounted, I made up some, hang on, I'll grab those. Maybe even I just hold the board up down there and get a sense of where it's going to go.
Yeah, we can probably...
Because we can mount bolts kind of anywhere out of the way.
Yeah, that's it. I figured there's plenty of room on the corners, so it might be easy.
Yeah, we've got a few more options.
Whatever lines up with the supports there.
Leon's just run down to J-Car to grab some plugs for the solar cells. In the meantime, I'm just going to weld these little tabs on so we can mount the board he's been making up. Okay, have the distribution board mounted now. Obviously it's going to have to come off again to paint the lazarette at some point, but that's no big deal. The idea of it being here is this hatch isn't hinged, you have to lift it off. There's also going to be a table over the top of here. So being in the lazarette, you can just lift the hinged hatch and reach the battery switches without any drama. So that was kind of one of the main criteria. Then on the red arc BCDC 1250D, you can see all the display at the top because it's pointing upwards as well. Also means the heatsink cooling vents are vertical for good convection currents. Now I'm just going to start trying to sort out some hoses for the bilge pump while I wait for Leon to get back from J-Car, and then we'll finish the electrics. I've mounted 2 bilge pumps to a piece of polyboard. Their wires are then just grouped with some cable ties into the 3 for each bilge pump. One is 12 volt, one is 24 volt. So they're going to run off the 2 separate house banks. I really like this bilge pump hose because I think it's just all cast from the same material, but they've cast a kind of a spiral reinforcement through it so it doesn't, you know, pinch off easily and stop water flowing. But the inside is completely smooth, so it lets the water flow really freely as well. So let's figure out how much we need of this and cut it and get it hooked up to the pumps. These outlets on these pumps seal with an O-ring, but they stop in really awkward positions. So I'm going to put thread tape on them so that I can get them to point up and a little bit towards the starboard side of the boat. A bit like this one, but both of them. So our first plan is just to connect all our batteries now to the distribution board, and then we'll run some power for the bilge pumps.
Yep.
I've got fuse posts on the 2 house banks, but nothing on the starter.
That's right, yeah. So
cool.
That one's all right. We can connect that up later.
Yep.
But it would be good to fuse that as well.
Yeah, well, you're protecting the cable then, even if we fuse it downstream.
Yep.
So the general principle with fusing, as far as I understand, is you essentially fuse everything. You go right from your power source, what's the fuse appropriate for the cable, so the cable doesn't melt should it's short, and then when you get to device, you step down to whatever fuse the device itself needs. So every part of the you know, the system, the cabling and the devices are all fused appropriately.
Cool. So once we've got that done, the next one is bilge and then solar feeding
Bit
it.
of solar.
And then that way you're
Alright.
right to let the system look after itself.
So I might push on with hoses for the bilge pumps.
Yep.
What I can also do, I've got some 7-core tinned, and I might connect that to every output on the bilge pumps.
Yep.
And that can be our run to the switches.
Yeah, and I'd measure that up the length that you'd need to get to your switch panel
Panel up front.
That's where we'll run it eventually.
Yep. Okay. Done deal.
That works.
All right. Divide and conquer. Thank you. This wire here is some tinned 7-core wire I picked up, which is essentially marine trailer wire, and it's got 7 cores, and I'm going to hook it up to the 6 cores coming out from our 2 bilge pumps. Just going to solder and heat shrink onto here. Alright, all the wires are now soldered and heat shrinked, and I've written down what colour goes to where, so we'll put a final heat shrink over the top and throw this in the bilge. These are the 3 thicker cables, the high capacity cables that Dylan ran the other day. So there's a ground, positive 12, positive 24. But then Leon and I have just run this orange cable now, which is actually a multi-core 3-phase cable. And we're going to use this for unswitched power to run the bilge pumps. Leon's doing some main wiring in the engine bay there. So he's just fed the 7-core cable going to the bilge pumps up to me. Then I'm going to run them up with enough cable to get up to the top, put some switches in temporarily, just resting there until we get the new panel made. Having successfully got some power, unswitched power to the front for the bilge pumps, Leon and I are now just running 3 cables through some glands, through the bulkhead here, getting to our switched power here. So once we've got our batteries hooked up to a switch power, we can start looking at some way of charging the batteries.
So the third one's long.
Oh yeah.
So we get the starting there, so that's good.
Alright, time to put this crane into action, start getting some of the stuff on deck so we can get going. This is just lanolin, a bit of fleece grease. Alright, success. I'm so glad that electric motor was fixable. There's no way I would have got a new one in time. I've basically been packing the boat today. Still no word from the crane company, which means I can only assume tomorrow morning now. Well, pending any last minute phone calls, today is the day for launching. They're supposed to be here in about half an hour or something. I'm just packing up a few last things and I'm going to get some fenders out. The tide is out, as you can see. So they're going to be dropping it on the mud on some timber so they can pull the slings out. Then I'm going to have to tie it against the seawall so it doesn't topple over, and just put some fenders out so it doesn't rub against the seawall, and wait for the tide to come up. When it comes up, it's only going to be a 1.5 predicted, which is not a lot, so we'll see. A little bit worried about that, to be honest with you, but it is what it is. good news is they're here. Bad news is they can only drop it in with the bow facing towards the camera here, which means I would need to pull the bow out over that lump of Eddy Island. And we've only got the 1.5 metre, and now we might have to pull it from the stern rather than the bow. Feeling less confident now. Could be sitting here for a month at this rate. Everything went really smoothly with the cranes. The guys were very professional, did an awesome job, very, very happy. You know, it was the weather that delayed the launch, it's not their fault. The real trouble with this delay is that I only had a 1.5 metre tide. I brought it in on almost a 2 metre tide, which is as high as the tide gets here. So when almost half a metre less. I think it probably wasn't quite at the top of the 2 metre tide when I brought it in, but definitely at least a foot lower than it was when I came in. I actually wasn't filming at the time, but when they pulled the last strap off, it rolled over onto the piles here, so that's all right. We didn't put it closer to the pile. If it was really close to the pile, we could have tied it tight so it didn't roll, but the water was deeper, just a little bit out, so we went for that instead. Anyway, I've set myself up a little waiting station so I can wait here in my chair, see what happens. The cavalry's on the way though. Pete Bentley's gone back to his place to get some winching rigging gear. Rick, my mate with the Chief, is coming round. Unfortunately, the Chief's getting fixed at the moment, finally. So he's just coming round to Tinny to help out. And then Dave Howell's coming round with Delstar to do the kind of main tow. So if we get it right on the peak, who knows? I think we'll get it out with enough determination. But it's certainly about a foot lower tide than I would hope for. Water coming in through this stern gland, so I'm just going to tighten them up a bit more than I did originally. Starting to slow down finally. It's gone in quite a way, so I could technically pop it out and put that furled ring in, but I think we'll just get it tight for now. I think it'll seal, particularly while the shaft's not turning while I'm away. Alright, finally tight enough to stop. One leak gone. I just say one leak, I think it's the only leak, so that's good. It's gone tight. That means it must actually be floating a little bit. I'll loosen that off so it can come upright. What I'd really love to do is put a rope on the bow and pull the bow straight out and try and swing the boat around. I don't know, it's really shallow here just off Eddy Island, and I don't know if it's going to work. I'm really loath to try and pull it out stern first because I've got the whole flat keel, the rudder in the mud. It's an enormous amount of force, so I don't know. We'll try both. I think I'll definitely try bow first. If that doesn't work, I'll try stern gently. If that doesn't work, it's going to be here for a month. Yes, it's definitely looking a lot more level than it was before, so we know the water's starting to support the hull to some degree, and we're not at the top of the tide yet, so here's hoping. Pete's back with a bit of rigging gear. We're going to just experiment. I'll show you. There's some piles off here which if we get down low around the concrete we might be able to lift off. Obviously we'll just keep a really good eye. If they start showing any signs of moving, we'll just abandon that plan. But you know, it's something we can winch off.
That is a snatch.
Right, so that's designed to have stretch, and then
This one,
right, winch extension strap.
yeah. So they are different straps.
So we could actually do like a snatch strap to Howley's trawler, get him to gun it, and then...
As crazy as it sounds,
Do you need me there or?
No, you are perfect where you are now. Yeah, all this is doing is pulling it over.
What is it, another month for the next big month? Yeah, you just pull it over.
I reckon we just wait for a bit more water, Pete. Well, that's what I was thinking. I could actually put some flotation liquid somewhere. Do the airbags, inflate them over it or something.
It's hurt the until we can pull to it. No. Okay. Wind out, Troy.
Work on the turf. I reckon that
just
heel is so embedded.
No, you're moving it. So you just need the turf going. Hey, Stu, back her up.
I was just rolling it.
Just bring the strength onto it.
Yeah.
Keep going. We know
Love the smell of clutch in the morning.
You don't have to move it. Just get it up so.
Pete's on turfer duty. We've got the starboard quarter tied off the Land Rover. The channel's very, very narrow. It's really the width of the boat. Anytime we went slightly out of the channel, the rudder would dig into the bank and we were just going nowhere until we then reset all the turfer, got it out, winched the boat back into the channel, got it going again. So it was a really tedious process of us all wading up to our waist in, really muddy water, lots of oyster cuts on our feet, reefing on the lever for the turfer, just getting it, and eventually at the end, when Delstar was able to pull it and it started moving, I thought, we've made it, and that was the moment. But that was literally 2 hours of struggling, racing against the tide dropping again. So I left the camera running, but it's, the battery went flat long before. It was a full battery, but it went flat long before the process was over because it was such a long process. It's just really hard to describe, and all I can say is how thankful I am to the people who came to help today. Pete bringing his gear, Rick and Rob came down to help, and it was awesome having a couple of other deckhands. They brought their little boat, their little putt-putt down. We tried with that. Then Troy and Dave Howell came down with Delstar, and they eventually helped us tow it to the mooring. My stepson Sam came down, gave us, a hand where he could and some moral support. It was just like, without everyone being there, I wouldn't have got the boat floating, So big thanks to all of you. My phone's back at the hard stand where the boat was. My camera's there, it's gone flat, but we're on our way. It's a really long story, but I'll tell you guys eventually. It's a shame the camera went flat when we were filming because it was a many hour long struggle to winch this thing across the mud. It was nuts. Anyway, it's floating. It had to be floating today. I'm flying out to the US tomorrow. And the tides were only shrinking every day. They get lower and lower. So it was kind of now or never, but it's done. So Delstar's towing us, the boat we picked up at Coffs. And I've got to say, I'm really thankful. The guys really dug deep today, wading in mud, bare feet, oyster cuts, winching, just doing everything to get this boat back in the water, and they did it. So, very thankful for that. Ease it up.
What do you reckon, Siri?
Yeah, I reckon we're good. I think it's just our way on will help.
Tell me what.
Just go in neutral.
Neutral. Stay neutral.
Okay. On, Dave.
Anything you want to say at this momentous moment, Stu?
Thank for that. Tomorrow I go overseas, so tomorrow afternoon, I think midday, I've got to be at the airport, which means leaving kind of crack of dawn. The boat seems watertight, had a bit of a leak in the stern gland, as you saw. That's now not even dripping at all, so that's fine. You know, I know you need it to drip a little bit when the motor's running, but I want it tight now while I'm away and the prop shaft's still. While I think of it, we've got 3 meetups organised for in the US while I'm there. At the moment, we'll probably do something in New York, just a drink or dinner or something, I don't know. I'll figure that out closer to the time. I know it's really short notice, but we do have Hampton organised, which is the mouth of Chesapeake Bay at a marina there. I'll put the details in the description, but that's Thursday the 5th of September, so literally like, well, 2 days away for us. We're a day ahead, so 2 or 3 days away. Then we've got Doug at Tulsa to go and see SV Seeker, and that is on Saturday the 21st. After that then we've got Pasadena on Friday the 27th, which is the day before I fly out. The one at Pasadena on the Friday, there's an RSVP site, so all of them, I'll give all the correct details in the description, so double check that just to make sure I haven't made a mistake, and any requirement to RSVP will be in there as well. Alright, well take care. I've got to go and pack a suitcase and I will edit this on the plane and I'll catch you all soon. See ya.